welcome to another guest interview here on the Profit with Law podcast. I'm your host, Moshe Amsel, and our guest today is Tom Lenfestey, founder and CEO of the Law Practice Exchange. I want to unpack the value of how can people consider buying a firm, acquiring a firm in their growth strategy. So that's really where I want to focus our conversation. I'm just going to go to my website, my browser here real quick. I'm pulling up your website, the Law Practice Exchange, which you'll plug at the end. But one thing that I noticed, and I told you this in the green room before we started, is that you have three tiles on there: buy a law firm, sell a law firm, and then sell a 2 million plus revenue law firm, where that's more like a full service brokerage experience that you offer. And I explored with you, well, does that mean that the bulk of the firms coming to the marketplace are below 2 million in revenue? And your answer was yes, that's a large volume of what's coming in is those small, really small practices. So within that below 2 million range, are you seeing a lot of solos, or are you seeing firms that have like one associate on staff, and some marketing built out? Just trying to understand what's being sold out there so that we can kind of set the stage for what's available for purchase.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and really, as I started the Law Practice Exchange, it was to help the solo owners, right? Because if you're in a big partnership, you should hopefully have a succession program in your firm to like groom the next generation and everything else. But, it's really to help those solos. Solo ownership, as everybody knows, could be somebody that, is cranking out, it's just them as an attorney. They're doing 300,000 in revenues a year. Or it could be you're a solo owner of a big PI practice doing 200 million, right? It's just you're a solo owner, but how deep that is. That under 2 million mark, Moshe, like that is what we're seeing a lot of need for amongst, sellers. It's also a lot for our buyers, a great first step, right? Meaning they don't have to, take over a $10 million firm and the financial commitment and everything else that would require a $1 million firm, meaning $1 million in revenues, probably has a strong brand, existing clients, referrals, marketing, everything else that comes with it in that community that they've served. And the opportunity to take over $1 million under the right deal terms and everything else can really help a buyer grow. But to that $1 million firm owner that's looking to exit, is they may have an associate or two, but what we're seeing more and more of is associates are not always interested in buying. They don't want to be the next generation owner.
What if their brand name is their name, like the Friedman Law Firm, and my name is Amsel, not Friedman, right? So what happens then? Is that a barrier to the sale? Is that something that people typically would change after they purchase it because they're buying the brand recognition? So how does that work?
Yep, absolutely. So if you've named the firm after yourself, which if you're looking at a, solo owner that's been practicing 30, 40, 50 years, most of them have named the firm after themselves or themselves and some retired or deceased partners or otherwise. And it is a little bit tougher to transition, right? So if you're XY community law, right, a branded community law that really doesn't have the owner's name, that's easier to switch the owners, behind the scenes. You still need to make sure the referral relationships and everything's done right, but you don't have to worry about the firm name change, right? So actually, I love seeing it. And in some of like the, coaching programs and everything else, you start to see more and more firms now that are using DBAs as the states allow them, to really adopt a true brand for their firm, right? Their website domain, their other, to have that, because then you're focusing on building the business and building the business goodwill value versus just, it's an extension of me, right? I tell everybody I started really the Law Practice Exchange, I think, because I read Built to Sell years ago by John Warlow. And I don't know if you've read it, Moshe. It's a great, quick read. But the biggest, concept from that was if you are everything, you don't necessarily have a business to sell.
From the buyer's perspective, what does it look like financially to acquire a firm? What is the most common structure that you're seeing out there? And then what options are available as far as finding the money to make that happen?
Yep. Absolutely. So I think to, a buyer, if you're looking at buying, let's just use that $1 million revenue firm, right? Or something below. The opportunity is really there to preserve that amount of revenue or unleash more. Usually when we have a strong buyer, right, that has built systems, has good, strong CRM, marketing, typically the sellers, if they are, nearing retirement or otherwise, they haven't implemented those. So the opportunity to acquire, but really unleash, right? A lot of those revenues and see growth. So we have seen buyers that have, increased their revenues 50% or 100% overnight. We've seen buyers that have come in as individual attorneys that didn't have ownership of a firm, and they're going to come in day one and be, of course, that owner. And then the deal structure, Moshe, are really meant to cash flow positive even after purchasing the firm. And what I mean by that is, let's say it's $1 million firm, it's $1 million price tag. Terms are structured, everything else. But as a buyer, you're assuming some risk, right? For payment of purchase price, everything else. So right now in the marketplace, most of our buyers are lawyers, pretty risk adverse, right? We don't like a lot of risk as lawyers. But really what you're saying is, okay, I'll agree to a purchase price and to payment terms that essentially will say in year one, revenues, expenses, right? After everything's done, then I have a purchase price, and I still want to see excess profit from this deal in year one. Not all business purchases, like other industries, everything else, are structured that way. But right now, what we're seeing as law firm deals, it'll change over time, but is really after purchasing the firm and purchase payments and everything else, I actually want to end up better in year one and year two and year three, right? And going forward, I don't want to go into the hole at all.